Accountability by people that you love, respect, and admire is the highest form of love a man can get. Accountability, not letting us off the hook, not absolving us of our misdoings, but accountability. Like, I respect you, I look up to you, I love you, Ryan, and I see what a good human you are, what a great message you're trying to put out there. I'm human, and when the time comes that I'm off the rails, I don't want you to be like, well, life was hard and I can see how that happened. Hold me accountable to get back on the rails, because I'm a man on a mission, and every day that I'm off the rails is a day that I'm not being an example to my kids. I'm not leading my organization, and I'm not donating or giving to the causes and charities that I believe in.
Bedros, what's up, man? So great to see you. Glad to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the opportunity again, man. Good seeing you, Ryan.
Always good. Hey, I told you I was going to start with something. I've got to throw an audible here. I want to say this to you, and I want to say this to everybody who might be listening. You are one of the few people who stood by me and supported me and believed in me when I was going through all the bullshit I was going through a year and a half ago. And I want to start this conversation off by saying I appreciate that. That means a lot. You didn't have to do that, but you did it anyways. And that means a lot to me, more than you might know.
Well, first off, that means a lot that you're acknowledging it. And I think as friends, as brothers, it's not what we do or say publicly. It's how we support each other privately. And I know you would have been there for me in a similar situation. And it's just the least I could do for someone who's a friend and a brother.
Yeah, like I said, that means a lot. I wanted to kick this conversation off. I've seen some things on social media over the past several weeks. Steve, who is obviously, he's within your organization. He's somebody I know very well. He's such an interesting personality. He's such a hard ass, but I think deep down inside, he really cares about people. But there's been some viral stuff going on about what you guys are doing with men and how you're training men and how you're leading them and calling them up. And there's a lot of controversy around that. Would you mind explaining that?
Yeah. So as you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had our 19th class of the project, the Modern Day Night Project. And for anyone who doesn't know what the project is, it's a 75-hour straight experience for men who are, and some of these men are former military, some are first responders, some are entrepreneurs, some are people that are executives in companies. And so what they have in common is they're men, and they lost their sense of, or have never discovered their sense of meaning, purpose, and team. And as you know, when a man doesn't have a sense of meaning, purpose, and team, he is going to start drifting in life. And that's where the vices and escapes typically come in, whether it's infidelity, pornography, alcohol, drugs, you name it, gambling. And so these men, when they come to us to go through the project, it's not like they're going through a mud run or a Spartan race. Nothing wrong with that. It's not like they're going through a 75-hour challenge. They're there because they are looking for that community, meaning, purpose, and team. And they understand that they are having some kind of self-sabotaging behavior that's showing up as a pattern in their life that is constantly limiting their human experience in their marriage, in their business, in their finances, in their health and fitness, in their mental and emotional fitness. And so anyway, we ran the project. And as you know, if you want things to go viral, you want to take your iPhone and take the most sensational clips of a 75-hour experience. And so in total, during the 75 hours, it starts at Tuesday at 1 p.m., goes till Friday at 5 p.m. In total, we probably put up about 16 minutes of content on our social media stories from a 75-hour experience. And the content we put up is Steve mostly dragging these guys around by their rucksacks, is Steve where he takes the K-bar, and, Steve's a Marine, and he takes the K-bar out of his side, and he goes, if any one of you who don't belong at the graduation dinner think you're going to make it somehow to the graduation dinner on Friday. And we all have this project tattoo, us instructors, and actually half the graduates now have this tattoo on their hand or body somewhere because it's so meaningful to us. Steve goes, I will take this effing knife and I'll carve this tattoo off my hand. And so, of course, I know he's going to do that. He does that for every class. When I say, hey guys, now I'm going to introduce my instructors, it always goes to the Navy SEAL, the Comm Marine, Nick, and then Steve. So I conveniently bring up my iPhone and just start recording and, kind of show the expression of all the candidates going through it. So to us, it's standard practice. We want to immediately show them that now we've got dominance over you, that you are now ours for the next 75 hours. We're going to control your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. We're going to trigger you. And we want to see how they react or respond. Obviously, when a man responds to a situation, he's thought it through. If they react, it's from a place of emotion and feelings. Typically, when a fist goes through a wall in front of your wife and she's scared, or your kids see that, that's a reaction, an emotional reaction. And then we will stop those moments and go, hey, where else is it showing up in your life? So the project, the entire 75 hours is a metaphor for life. But of course, those clips in my stories and on the MDK project stories went viral. First, Fox News picked it up, and then Barstool Sports picked it up, and then some big content creators on YouTube, like I think there's one called the Angry Cop or Angry Officer or whatever his account is. Seems like really solid guy. Seems like a solid guy. But what's funny is Fox News, Barstool Sports, the Angry Cop. There's another big 7 million subscriber account on YouTube. Cool dude with long hair, funny as heck, man. I love his videos. The first time he made a video on us, he goes, look at these guys. They're running a Navy SEAL Buds program in the back of a Walmart, which is actually not true. It's my compound in my gym that you've been to. But I get it. But they're literally taking clips that we have intentionally taken out of proportion and put out there. What they don't see is the journaling. They don't see the deep work of, talking about the traumas that these men have gone through. They don't see the conversations, and we'll never record the conversations of these men talking about sitting in their car with the pistol in their lap, ready to blow their brains out. Or one gentleman 2 classes ago said, I found myself at 1 a.m, sitting at a park by my house with the pistol in my hand, wondering, what the fastest way it is to kill myself. These are the guys that come to the project, and I say to you, man, they come from former military, first responders. We've had guys that have been congressmen and senators from Mexico to America, men from every walk of life. And it's not like they're looking for a beatdown. They understand that they are about to go through a rebirth and a complete cleansing, emotional purging, and an opportunity to connect with the brotherhood. But nevertheless, social media does what it does best. And Fox News, Barstool Sports, and a few content creators picked it up and really shit on us, which I don't mind because I know the work we do. I hear from the men after the project. And certainly not every guy graduates. Some get injured and have to medically roll to the next class. And others decide this is not for them. And they could, at free will, ring the bell and quit anytime they want. But we did get a lot of negative press. But I'm okay with that because none of that is going to stop me from the mission that we're on, which is serving men and helping them rise to their higher potential and purpose in life. And, oftentimes we'll hear on social media, why are you paying $18,000 for this 75-hour course? You can go to the Marine Corps and they'll pay you to go through a boot camp type experience. Well, again, all they see is 16, 17 minutes out of 75 hours. They don't see where we're coaching them on their relationships with their kids, with their spouses. They don't see where we're referring them to therapists who can help them overcome sexual trauma that they've experienced or physical trauma that they've experienced or limiting beliefs. They don't see where we're coaching them on their business to help them, 5X and 10X their business over the next few years. And I don't know, I've never been a Marine. I'm a civilian. I've never been in the military. But I don't think they teach entrepreneurship, how to deal with relationships, and any of those things, how to deal with trauma. And so those are the things that we work with, and I'm massively proud of the work we do. But it is very misunderstood.
It is. Well, and I've had the luxury of spending a lot of time with you and breaking bread, and we went surfing together, and you taught my oldest son how to surf. And then I remember a vivid moment in Mexico. You and me and a couple other guys were down there thinking about how we could bring some of these messages to the market. And you were talking about trauma, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so sick of hearing about trauma. And you said, well, Ryan, I vividly remember this. Well, what else would you call it? somebody who's sexually molested, somebody who's gone through some serious hardships, some challenges, and you're talking about men exclusively. And I was looking at it from like, I'm so tired of hearing this, but there's this other side, and I don't want to call it a softer side, but there's more context when you're actually sitting down, being part of this organization, participating in these events, but everybody wants to look at it and just bash on it versus seeing it for what it is. And like I said, you're talking about trauma and emotional, mental abuse and how to overcome that and those hardships. And that's something that I think is a little bit taboo specifically for men in today's society.
Yeah. It is taboo because there is no place that men can go and speak about this stuff and heal with other men. And yeah, I suppose you can go get a therapist. I certainly worked with a therapist 10 years ago. I worked with them for 15 months to get over my shit. However, just like me, most men think that, well, therapy is for broken people and I'm not broken, or I don't know that guy. I'm not going to go talk to that guy or gal about what happened to me as a kid. I'd rather just put it away in my head and move forward in life. But we could never put anything fully away in our head. The reason is that's called compartmentalizing. And yes, you think you put it away, you put it in a box and you put it away, and then you put other boxes in front of it and on top of it so you don't see it. But it's still showing up in areas in your life, in your relationship, in your business, with how you interact with your kids, how you feel about yourself. And I'm not the most tree hugging woo-woo type of guy that's going to play a sound bowl and go hug a tree. But I can tell you, if there's not a lot of self-respect and self-love, you're going to constantly self-sabotage through some kind of vice or escape. And it's going to ruin your relationships. It's going to ruin your human experience. And since we only get one chance at this thing they call life on this rock, like, why not have the most fulfilling human experience with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends, with a business that you can build and give a lot of that money to charities and causes that you believe in. And to do that, we have to unfuck ourselves. There's no other way to say it. And men have no outlet for that. And I wanted to create the outlet, and that's why we created the project.
Do you think the level of, I mean, obviously there's this other side that a lot of people don't see, but clearly there's a level of intensity to your programs, to put it mildly. Do you think that this is a requirement? Do you think this is something that is necessary? Or and I'm just trying to look at it from anybody who might be listening. I know you, but I'm also trying to figure out what people might see. Is that necessary for a man, or is there another approach that doesn't require that same sense of in your face or attitude or confrontational element to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And no, it's absolutely not necessary. It is necessary for the project, the way we run it. And we certainly don't hide the fact that we are very much in their face, that we are very confrontational. And that's on purpose because, look, I worked with the therapist for 15 months. I put myself through all these physical challenges because I just love trying new things and hiring a coach and going through a physical challenge, whether it's running training for and running a marathon in 6 weeks, rock climbing, jiu-jitsu, MMA fighting. I put myself through hard adversity intentionally because adversity does introduce a man to his highest self. However, we also know that many of these men won't go out there and do it. So we're saying, look, pay for the experience. And not only are we going to have the healing conversations and the deep, meaningful work, but we're also going to test you because John Eldridge's book, he talks about every man wants to know if he has what it takes. And most men have never really figured out if they have what it takes. Maybe dad was absent. Maybe they had no older male figure in their life to show them the way of men, as our friend Jack Donovan would say in his book. And so at the project, we also teach them, our Navy SEAL, he's a combatives, pistol combatives expert, and he'll teach them room clearing with the pistol. And we have jiu-jitsu instructors come in and teach them, combatives in terms of grappling and what happens if you're attacked. We teach them, we've got a SEER instructor who comes in and teaches them how to, have situational awareness and be able to talk your way out of a kidnapping situation or be able to break out of zip cuffs and duct tape and handcuffs and all these things that are cool guy skills that I went out and just did because I wanted to learn. You know, I love my dad. He brought us to the United States. He freed us from communist rule. But my dad never taught me this stuff. So I went out seeking it out and paid for it and got that. Not every guy's going to do that. So we decided that we're going to make this a fully immersive experience that includes combatives, pugil sticks, that includes like, we asked these guys, when was the last time you've been in a fight or been hit by a man or you've hit another man? And hands, maybe one hand will go up out of 35 guys that start a class. And we go, well, guess what? You're going to experience that in a controlled environment, and we're going to try and mentally and emotionally trigger you to get you fully distracted to go tunnel vision. And when you go tunnel vision, you're going to use the skills you learned yesterday to use today in this combative 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 situation. And so to get these men emotionally worked up, to get them to shut down, to get them to bond. How about this, Ryan? We hear about the phrase, blood is thicker than water, but it's taken out of context. The actual phrase is the covenant of the blood is thicker than the water of the womb. In other words, men that have gone through adversity, men that have spilled blood together, have a greater bond than siblings that have been born from the same womb. The covenant of the blood is thicker than the water of the womb. And so, dude, you imagine 35 guys come to the project, hour number one, and they're all strangers. For them to open up and talk about physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, what happens in their life that created these limiting beliefs and these shitty experiences and self-sabotaging behaviors and addictions and vices that they can't talk about at work because they might lose their career. We need these guys to bond and connect, to feel safe around each other. And no better way to get them to bond and connect than for my instructors to basically become the enemy. So it's basically my 4 instructors. It's myself and 4 instructors, 2 Marines, 2 Marines, a Navy SEAL, and an Air Force SEER guy, and myself. And I teach entrepreneurship and emotional discipline and time management, productivity, all that stuff. But for my instructors to become the enemy forces them to become a unified force together. I love seeing in hour number 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're by themselves, they're just focused on themselves. Hour number 9, 10, 11, 12, when they're going through the mud pit, they're hiking with logs, they're pulling a truck. Now they're referring to each other as brother. You got this, brother. Let me help you out. Let me grab your rucksack. Let me grab your sledgehammer. Go up the hill and I'll give you a rucksack back. We want these guys to bond because at hour number 36, that's where we have what I consider the most difficult evolution of all. It's not an ice bath. It's not a truck pull. It's not the beach torture that Will puts them through. It is sitting down in a classroom environment, opening up their journals, and literally me walking them through the worst experience of their life. And I talk about mine. I go, hey, between the ages of 4 and 6, I was molested by 2 older boys. And here's how that showed up in my life, in my relationship, with my kids, in business, with the way I led my company, in the addictions that I had. And that's the only evolution. Of 19 evolutions that we have, the only evolution that has boxes of Kleenex. Every other guy, there's a box of Kleenex sitting on the table because myself included, grown men were just falling apart crying because for the first time ever, we're purging. We're talking about the thing that we hid and never talked about that's been haunting us forever. And these are the things I'll never show on social media because it's so private to them. I will take this to my grave. I don't share it with anyone. I'll never write a book about it. But we hear some horrible stuff, man. And these men feel freed. And for them to have that freedom to talk like that, we need them to bond. Best way for them to bond is for us to beat them down physically, mentally, emotionally, to see us as the enemy, for them to become a strong, unified front. So during hour number 36 and beyond, it's now us against them. And what, again, people don't see is the final 12 hours, we become their friends. And now it's positive reinforcement. And we let down our character. Now we're fist bumping. Now we're saying congratulations. Now we're saying, hey, I can't wait to have dinner with you Friday night and see how you look cleaned up in a black suit. But we drop that wall too. But we have to come out with fire in the beginning to be able to get them to bond.
Yeah, I remember years ago I did a Spartan event. It was the Spartan Agoge. It was a 50-hour endurance event. And what was interesting is there was a lot of, to put it mildly, bullshit, physical bullshit that we just had to go through. And you saw guys dropping like flies left and right. And then Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan, came out and said, hey, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. And he said, if you want to be done, leave now. If you don't, you're in, that sort of thing. And we had a bunch of guys leave. And we were probably 10 hours into this thing. But I decided before I even attended, you're going to have to drag me out on a stretcher or a casket if you want me to, be done with this before my 50 hours. And so I had this like thought in my mind of like, I'm going to quit. I'm like, nope, you already made a commitment. You can't quit now. And it got easier from a physical perspective because from where I sat, and I think this is what you're saying, they needed to weed out all the bullshit. And they needed to weed out the guys who didn't deserve to be there. And they needed to weed out the chaos and the nonsense and the clutter and the softness to get to the root of those who actually wanted to be there for the right reason. And when he made that ultimatum and a bunch of guys left, everything got easier from a physical perspective. Mentally and emotionally it was still challenging, but the physical stuff was over at that point, 10 hours into a 50-hour event.
Yeah. Yeah, that well said. And that's what you want, because you don't want people there who aren't going to be fully committed to the experience, to the transformation, to not sharing. And we've had this happen before where we get to the toxic cognitions evolution where they're supposed to talk about the worst thing that ever happened to them, or at least journal about it. And they'll start writing like lies, right? And then later on, they'll pull me aside and go, hey, I didn't really want to talk about it or journal about it, but that's not what really happened to me. This is what really happened to me. Well, fine. But listen, if you want a brotherhood, if you want to bond with these guys, if you want to know that you have peers that you can reach out to for a lifetime, because remember, the project now is 5 years in, and guys from class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond are super bonded. Then you got to be forthcoming. And so there is a weeding out, a thinning of the herd that must happen. And for us during the project, because it's 75 hours long, it is that first 24 hours. Like, we give them plenty of opportunities and plenty of reasons to drop out, ring the bell, and quit.
What is your take on the word vulnerability? Because when I hear that word, it's a little bit cringy. It's a lot cringy for me. I don't like the word itself. I can see the value of the sentiment, but I'm curious about your take on vulnerability, especially amongst men.
You know, I tell these guys all the time. So when the project is about to come to an end, the final hour, we do something called the next 90 days. In other words, hey, how should your next 90 days look? And I have them open their battle book. And we talk about the next 90 days. Like, how are you going to be when you go home? Like, don't expect your wife or your kids all of a sudden to expect this, to accept this new 2.0 version of you. Ease them into who you are. And we had to learn that stuff. So we talk about the next 90 days. And in there, I talk about, look, it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to be emotional. It is not, to show emotions, but it is not okay to become emotionally reckless, because I've heard Andrew Tate say this one time. He says, when a woman is emotional, she might cry, drink a half a bottle of wine, and talk to her friends about it, and that's that. When a man is emotionally kind of unhinged, he might go on a killing spree. We start seeing red. And so, vulnerability, good. Emotionally reckless, not good. I think there's nothing wrong with vulnerability. You and I are friends. I might sit there with you and be like, hey, man, I want to have this like vulnerable conversation where I'm just going to kind of vomit out all the things that keep me awake at night. And you're going to be like, all right, B, I get it. But vulnerability to the point of emotional reckless, I think that makes men dangerous because they are unpredictable. And I don't want an unpredictable man around me. There's too many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, if I'm being honest or vulnerable here on this podcast, I've been that way with you, man. You've heard me. I've had phone calls with you where I'm literally crying. Yeah. So I think we ought to be aware of when we're expressing vulnerability. And I like what you're saying about Andrew Tate, where he talks about when women are emotionally vulnerable, they're a little reckless. Maybe they're drinking or whatever it may be. But not only are men dangerous, but also there's a real threat to men when we are emotionally reckless. Your employers will fire you. Your people will think less of you. We don't expect it from men to the degree that we expect it from women. So there's a real world consequence to being emotionally vulnerable and reckless with the way that you're expressing and experiencing your emotions. For men, I would say more so than for women.
Agreed. It is not a level playing field, and nor should it be.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to ask you about and talk a little bit more about this controversial issue. And one thing that was funny, and this is just a little story from an experience that I came out. You were gracious enough to invite us to one of your events, and it wasn't this event, the MDK project that you're talking about. But we came out, and I brought my two boys to this event, and I believe they were probably Black Site. They were 14 and 12, or 14 and 11 at the time, and Wes Watson spoke, and we know Wes. And it was like F-bomb, every other word, 10 years in the California State Penitentiary, obviously a rough figure, tatted up, very imposing, intimidating figure. And I asked my boys, I'm like, what'd you think about that? They're like, we were scared. We were scared. I'm like, yeah, he's a scary dude, for sure. Like, he's a scary, intimidating person. And I said, but what did you think about what he had to say? And they said, well, once we kind of got over being afraid, like, it was kind of interesting what he said. And I think one thing that I love about polarizing figures, intimidating figures, obsessive type figures is they cause us to think differently than we normally would and wake us up from our slumber that most of us fall prey to.
Yeah, well said. I think it's Napoleon Hill in his book, Outwitting the Devil. He calls it, most people are in a hypnotic trance, and they're in this hypnotic rhythm of just wake up, brush your teeth, get dressed, go to work, do your work, get in the car, come back home, rinse and repeat. Hypnotic rhythm. There's no meaning. There's no purpose behind any of their thoughts or their actions. At best, they might have water cooler conversations that are built around gossip and rumor. There's no depth to the conversations. And that is a very shallow existence. And I think there needs to be figures in life like Jesus, like Mother Teresa, like Gandhi, and many others that are willing to wake up the people. I think Andrew Tate does a great job of that. I think Wes Watson does a great job of that. Now, does that mean that they are exceptional in every category of life? Absolutely not. I would certainly not have my kids go and get mentored by these individuals. That is my responsibility. But can I take a valuable nugget from these polarizing individuals that are not just drifting through life, but have experienced hardship, have other experiences that maybe others haven't seen, and they're willing to bestow that upon us and let us know that it's okay to be obsessive, it's okay to be relentless, it's okay to want more, it's okay to do more, it's okay to expect more of yourself and others around you, and it's not okay to let them off the hook, but to actually tell people, like, I'm not going to let you off the hook like everyone else around you has, because if I do, that is not me loving you, that is me crippling you further. There's not enough people saying that to humanity, which is why we've become this bubble-wrapped society that leaves the training wheels on too long for their kids. And I think we need to fix that. And that is what the Squire program is meant to do.
Yeah, and look, even with my own work, I don't try to be offensive, but I don't really care if I am. If there's something I feel like I need to share, I'm going to share it in a deliberate, clear, concise way that a lot of people take issue with. And I'm not out every day to figure out who I can offend today. I don't set out to do that, but I'm also not fazed by it. And I think you, to maybe a greater degree, and somebody like Wes, maybe even to the nth degree. But we need people like that to cause us to think about things differently. I don't want to live in this slumber. I don't want a bunch of bobbleheads around me saying, yes, Ryan, you're great, you're wonderful. And I've had some level of success, and I can find plenty of people who are willing to, proverbially, jack me off and make me feel better about myself. But I really need somebody like you who's willing to say, hey, bro, you're effing up. And you need to be called out for it. And let's see if we can help you figure it out and get better. That's what I wish I would have had when I was growing up, what I wish I would have had 2 years ago, and what I wish I will have now with the people in my corner.
Yeah. And accountability by people that you love, respect, and admire is the highest form of love a man can get. Accountability, not letting us off the hook, not absolving us of our misdoings, but accountability. Like, I respect you. I look up to you. I love you, Ryan. And I see what a good human you are and what a great message you're trying to put out there. And I'm human. And when the time comes that I'm off the rails, I don't want you to be like, well, life was hard and I can see how that happened. Hold me accountable to get back on the rails, because I'm a man on a mission. And every day that I'm off the rails is a day that I'm not being an example to my kids. I'm not leading my organization, and I'm not donating or giving to the causes and charities that I believe in. And the greatest form of love any man can give another man is accountability, and not necessarily absolving them of their misdoings.
I think one of the dangers in society, though, B, is that there's so many people, and probably a lot of guys, frankly, listening to this podcast, who are looking for ways to be victims. And you could do that. You grew up in this environment where there was war and hostility and real possibility of death for you and your family. And you came to a country where you didn't speak the language. You grew up in poverty. I mean, you told me a story about having your hair washed out with gasoline to get rid of the lice that had infested your head. It's like, you could be a victim and everybody would say, yeah, I get that. But you've chosen not to go that route. Unfortunately, too many men love to play that card these days.
Yeah. Well, I think social media has amplified that as well, because let's face it, and I hate to say this, but if there's ever a platform to say this on, it's going to be on your platform, because we're friends. But about a couple months ago, man, I decided to do a little experiment on my Instagram account. And at first I said, I wrote up a little message and I said, I have a high level of respect and admiration for people that have seen adversity, that have gone through the shit, that have been beat up, abused, and left to die. You guys are the most special type of people, and I have a lot of respect for you. I believe in you. And then I posted it up. Man, that thing went viral. It had like 20x the engagement that most posts, because basically I said, hey, I know you've gone through hardship, and I think you people are the greatest type of people like us that have gone through hardship. And I do believe that. But I also knew that's kind of allowing them to go, yeah, you know what? I have had a hard life. Things have been bad for me. I should be recognized for that. And then literally the following week, I wrote, there are two types of people. In my 49 years, I figured out that there's two types of people. The type that will take extreme accountability, and the type that are extremely good at being victims. And depending on the type of person that you are, determines the outcome of your life. Man, let me tell you, not only was engagement low, but what comments I got was like, well, you don't know the stuff I'm going through. You can't say that, these factors can't influence my life. And I was like, holy crap. When you try and tell people, like, give them accountability, like, they will shit on you. When you go, hey, it's okay that you were a victim and I think you're still a good human, they're like, yeah, I'm going to share your content. And so that's how fragile we have become as a society, man. But nevertheless, I believe it's my job. The Creator has put me on this planet to hold myself first accountable to my core values. And then secondly, to expect that of every man and woman around me. And, sometimes to my detriment, to death threats, but that's okay. It's worth it.
Well, one thing I often think about is this idea of victimhood. It is okay to be a victim. When you were a boy, what control did you have over your life? None. You didn't get to decide where you were born. You didn't get to decide where your folks wanted to move you, whether it was within country or across the planet. You didn't get to decide how other people treated you. You were a victim. That's true. That's the reality. It's okay to be a victim. But it's not okay to continue to be a victim. And there came a point in your life where you had to make a decision like, okay, this is reality. And now I'm a grown ass man, and I'm going to decide to do something different with my life and use that as fuel to be better for myself and other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. And you're right. Like, I remember growing up and my mom and dad saying, well, you've always been thick. You've always been chunky. Right. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm the victim of being fat. And, oh, you've never been good at school. Oh, I guess I'm the victim of being dumb. And so I do remember that. And I always, when I do my keynote talks, I always talk about that in your first, 10, 15 years of life, your parents, your grandparents, school teachers, it's like God or the Creator says, hey, Ryan, here's your blank pages of your book of life. But we're going to give the pen, not to you, because you don't know best. We're going to give it to your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers. And all of them, by the way, they have their own trauma. They've had their own life adversity. They've had their own life experiences. So they see life through their own weird lenses anyway. And then we give them the pen the first 10 to 15 years, and they start writing the story of Bedros Keuilian. Oh, he's clumsy. He's not that smart. He's got 2 left feet. He's chunky. He's not that clean. He keeps his room a mess. And so then, I literally remember having a friend in one of the Section 8 housings that I lived in when we came to America, the complex. His parents and his siblings called him Gordito. He was a little Mexican kid, Gordito. And I was like, hey, what is Gordito? He goes, oh, it means like little fatty, little fat kid. And he answered to Gordito because apparently his parents fed him high sugar, high fat foods. And he's chunky. He probably isn't endomorph like I am. I could walk by a donut shop and get fat, which is why I have to work out like a savage and eat clean. But anyway, all that said, his story that he told himself is he's always going to be fat. Fast forward 20 years, I saw him in his probably almost 30 years old. We were both almost 30 years old, and he was still a fat, chunky kid or adult. And I believe the reason is we believe whatever people write in our life's book. We just forget that after a certain age, 15, 16, 18, 20 years old, you can take that pen back and start rewriting that Bedros is going to be athletic. He is going to be intelligent. He's not going to be dependent on the system. And it is taking that pen back and rewriting a story of the hero instead of the victim. But oftentimes we just let people keep the pen and keep writing about us, and we actually start believing that story and therefore adopting a false identity. And then we go through life looking for evidence to reinforce that false identity, which is untrue, but we've accepted it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is to a lesser degree. I remember when I moved from Southern California to Southern Utah, and I was so excited about the move because even at, I think I was 13 or 14 years old, I realized it was an opportunity for me to create a new identity. And I became a jock. I started playing football and got immersed with the jocks and the athletes and I was so excited about it because it was different than what I was 14 years of my life. And,
right.
and that was a cool experience for me at age 14, but we can do that every day. As men, we can decide, hey, maybe you're an alcoholic. Well, are you? Or is that something that you've adopted? I remember when I started going to AA meetings, there was this woman. She was 30 plus years sober. And they go around the room and they introduce themselves as, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. And I never did that. That's nothing. I would never say that because I don't want to identify as that. So I just introduced myself as Ryan. Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm here to learn. And this woman, I remember vividly, she says, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic and I've been 30 years sober. I'm like, damn it, stop calling yourself an alcoholic, please. You're embracing that as your identity. And what is that doing? I mean, if it works for you, great. But from where I sit, why do we embrace these titles that are not serving us, that are limiting who we could potentially become, but we're so wrapped up in our story that we have to perpetuate it forever?
There you go. That's exactly what it is. It's the perpetuation. 30 years later, dude, as far as I'm concerned, I guess maybe if someone's going to say, well, she was a clinical alcoholic. Well, okay, sure. But each time she says that, it does reinforce a message. Because when I think of an alcoholic, I think of someone who's irresponsible, that I wouldn't leave my kids, I wouldn't trust my kids with, I wouldn't trust my business with, that I wouldn't want to be friends with. I wouldn't want them to have access to my wallet or my money or my bank account. I hate to say that, but when I think about an alcoholic, I just think of someone who's irresponsible and reckless and could potentially harm my family, my business, or my life. And so I'd want to keep them at arm's length. Man, if you haven't had alcohol for 30 years, I would say you're probably just a regular functioning human who shouldn't drink because maybe you turn into a gremlin when you drink. So great, you figured out not to drink. But let's not wear that mask of alcoholism or an alcoholic where now you walk around telling me you're an alcoholic and I'm going to go, oh, shit, any minute now you could go back to being the way you were because she's probably proven that she's a responsible person, that she is ethical, that she's got new core values and she's reinvented herself. So why not redefine yourself? But people don't. They love wearing that hat and identifying with a thing. I don't know why that is, but it is the human condition.
Well, maybe it's just comfortable or just a level of complacency or maybe even laziness, or maybe ignorance, like they don't know any better. So I guess the question then begs, for a guy who's identified with being an alcoholic or a drug user or a cheater or a piece of shit or a loser or anything that he's adopted, how do you recommend for a guy like that to break that cycle? Because it's very easy for us to say, well, this is just the hand I was dealt. I can't do anything about that. What do you want me to do about it? Right? There's no level of accountability. What does a guy like that do?
Yeah, so great question. And so when they say this is a hand that I was dealt, or it happened to me, or it wasn't my fault, and I get it. Like, look, man, I got molested as a kid. Between the ages of 4 and 6, I was molested by 2 older boys in Armenia. I didn't walk up to them and say, "Here you go, guys, molest me." It happened to me. I was absolutely the victim. However, I had decided then, years later, right, that I'm not going to externalize that, meaning I'm going to go internal and go, what can I do about it now? So I'm never a victim in life again. So I'm not a victim of a bad business partner. I'm not a victim of the government trying to oppress me or overtax me. And so when we have this internal locus of control, we can redefine our life and create a new identity. When it's a external locus of control, meaning, well, that happened to me, it's not my fault, it's the economy, the president, my parents, I'm genetically predisposed to be fat. Okay, well, great. But the internal locus of control says, I am responsible, I can do something about it, it is within my control and power. And the moment someone decides to just go, I am going to be fully responsible for everything that happens in my life. In fact, there's a creed at the project. We have a creed, and there's a part of that creed that says, I am going to be responsible for everything that happens in my life, and that gives me the power and control to change my circumstances. So the moment we have this internal locus of control, we're able to then write down. I would say the next thing is adopt a locus of control. It's all on me. It's all my fault. I'm responsible, and that's that. No one outside of me can fix me other than me. And then you go, what is the version of the man that I want to be look like? Maybe he wakes up at 5 a.m., he drinks a protein shake, he sends out 3 gratitude text messages to people he's grateful for, he's working out by 9 a.m., he's focused on money and meaning and self-mastery. Okay, and what do those things look like? Write it out. Like, what does that avatar look like? And then live to that. Every day live to that. And I tell the guys at the project, I go, I pretend like there's a drone hovering over me 24 hours a day, and that my son and daughter, Andrew and Chloe, these are their baby pictures in here, but my son and daughter on their iPhones could tap in and see what dad is doing any minute, any time of the day, wherever I am in the world, live, right? And so my head,
that's good.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, I've identified who I want to be, and I have to be congruent to that man, because if Andrew and Chloe were to log in and see me live, and I'm like chowing down on donuts and snorting cocaine off a hooker's tits, that is not the congruent man that I say I am. And so when you decide that you're going to take internal locus of control and then identify what a winning man looks like, the idealized man that you love, respect, admire, and want to be like, and then you live to that man, knowing that you're going to live to that man because some people see you as an example. Could be your coworkers, could be your best friends, could be your kids. Then I don't know how you can go back and be a shitbag again. I just truly don't. Like, I believe karma would be too harsh on me if I went back to being the 1.0 version of myself. So I have to continue to be this 2.0 version of myself, to live as a solid example of humanity to my kids, to people that listen to my show, that read my book, that, buy my products and services and franchises. Otherwise, I'm the biggest hypocrite. And there was a study that came out about a decade ago, and the study proved that society has more respect for someone that has gone to prison, served their debt to society, and come out, than a hypocrite who says one thing but does another. And so I think being a hypocrite is lower than being a convict that has served their debt to society. And I never want to be a hypocrite.
One thing you said is, you said something about, karma would come back. I just want to dig down into that a little bit. Is it karma, which when I hear that, I think of some maybe cosmic force that just is lucky, or is it a natural order, which I think is more based on evolution, just the natural order of things? or is it a spiritual perspective, which is an eternal cosmic principle, and there's a being that's dictating all of this? What do you think about that?
Well, my personal belief is that we are all God-like, in that we all have a piece of God, the creator within us. That is our consciousness, that is our soul, that is our spirit. And so collectively, we are universal consciousness. And that's just my own personal belief. So knowing that, I believe there are some universal laws that exist. And so when I say I'm going to do something and I don't do that thing, I am hypocritical. Or when I do something bad to someone, when I know that I did something bad, I robbed them, I stole their car, I swindled them out of money, there has to be a universal balance. And I believe that's what karma is. The universal consciousness goes, oh, you have taken too much out of your karmic bank account, and you need to now deposit into your goodwill bank account. And so you will start feeling the pain. And I'll give you a great example of that. And now one might argue that everything I'm about to say is coincidence, Ryan. And so I get it. But it's my own belief. And if it's my own belief and I live by this belief system, and if it serves me well, then didn't I do well in life after all? Yes. And so here's what it is. I used to be a really big shitbag. I'm 49 years old now, but when I was 19, 20, 21 years old, I would carjack people for their Honda Civics and Honda Accords. Myself and a group of buddies, we would carjack people, and we looked at it as a victimless crime because we're not going to beat you up. We're going to be mean and aggressive and pull you out of your car, and we're going to take your car. You're going to go file insurance claim, and we're going to take your car to an auto body shop. They're going to part it out, and they're going to use those parts for cars that they're working on, and that's that. And they give us money for it. And so that's how I sold it to myself. Well, every time we would carjack and steal a car, and let's say I got my $400 or $500 worth of money from that endeavor, within a week or so, something would happen where I would lose that amount of money or more. In other words, my car would have this massive engine catastrophe that now it's going to cost me $600 to repair. I'm like, shit, I made $400, but it's a $600 repair. I remember another time I got a windfall of money like that, $500 or $600, and then I got a ticket for reckless driving, and my car got impounded soon after. And so I always felt like, okay, there's something happening where I'm doing bad things and bad things continue to happen to me. And I think there's a universal law that dictates that. You can't just keep doing shitty stuff and expect good things to happen. At some point, you have to start filling up your goodwill bank account. And I made it my mission. I've told you this before, the story of getting in a helicopter chase. We graduated to robberies of homes, stupidly. And one particular home, my friends didn't case it well. And there was this older woman in there. And I was the getaway driver. They hop the fence. They break the back door. They get in. Within seconds, they're hopping the fence and coming back out and yelling at me, drive, drive, drive. And I'm like, what the hell happened? You know, it was supposed to be an empty house. And we're supposed to steal this stuff and then take it to a pawn shop. Well, as it turns out, this woman was able to identify us, calls the police. Like an idiot, I had a yellow Toyota pickup. Talk about not blending in. So within about 5 minutes, Anaheim PD has their helicopter over me, and I'm trying to do a low-speed getaway. Needless to say, we weren't able to get away. I pulled into a gas station. The goal was we would all run out of the car and keep our mouths shut.
Well, sure.
Yeah, of course, that never happened. The unmarked cars, blocked my doors, pulled us out of the windows, rightfully so. The lady was able to identify my 3 friends, but was never able to identify me since I was the getaway driver. I was just hit with reckless driving. My car was impounded. My friends went to jail. I didn't. And that was the turning point for me. That's when I decided, I think someone up there has their eye on me, and this is a shot over my bow saying, this is your one and only chance. And I took it as that. Whether that was or not, I don't know, but I took it as that. And I said, moving forward, I'm going to fill up the Goodwill bank account. And thankfully, as I became a personal trainer, I met some affluent people who were actually willing to mentor me and coach me and believed in me and poured into me. And I started to do good things. And I felt so amazing that I've continued on to do those good things. And today we've donated millions of dollars to Shriners Children's Hospital over the last 12 years. Every year we adopt more kids through Compassion International. Currently, we have 97 kids adopted through Compassion. And then, we shut down the Target here right before Christmas, and we buy anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 worth of toys for Toys for Tots, which is run by the Marine Corps out here. And they give toys to kids who otherwise would wake up Christmas morning. I made it my mission to fill up my Goodwill bank account because the last thing I wanted to do was have, again, this is just my belief system, to have that karmic justice fall on my kids. And I don't know if it would, but I somehow got that download from the Creator. Like, what would be the worst thing that God would do to me? Well, he wouldn't punish me for my shortcomings. He would punish my kids. That would be the worst thing. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to be a decent human, because I've always felt guilty being a shitbag anyway, but I did it anyway because I wanted to fit in. And it was after that helicopter chase that I changed my path, listened to my mentors, and the rest was history. And it's been, I don't know, some 30 years now, almost 30 years of just trying to be a good human and filling up that Goodwill bank account.
I don't think I've ever heard the helicopter story. I think that was the first time I've heard that, actually. Yeah.
There you go. True story.
I would have remembered it if I heard. No, I'm glad you're talking about this. I tend to take, and you're talking about our Creator, you're talking about a spiritual perspective, but I tend to lean more into that. In fact, I often think of the parable of the talents. I've been blessed by my Creator with a certain set of skills and characteristics and opportunities. Who am I to hide those things? Who am I to bury those things? Right. And the parable of the talents teaches us that we are to take those and deploy them for the betterment of other people. And then if we can do that enough, and Zig Ziglar says this, help enough people get what they want, and you will inevitably get what you want. So I don't care if you're looking at it from a secular perspective or a spiritual perspective. We all agree on the same thing, and we can all see that there's something above and beyond just happenstance or chaos. It's definitely not that.
No. At best, it's probably organized chaos that is meaningful to our Creator, but to us, monkey-brained humans, we're just like, I don't get this. But I do believe there is always some type of divine intervention that takes place. And if we listen to the voices within, which these days there's so much external pinging that happens, social media, 24-hour news on the mainstream media, that we're not really going inward, listening to our consciousness, to our inner thoughts, to the inner dialogue that takes place. I think this is why, like, when you're in the shower, you have some of your best thoughts and you figure things out. It's the only place you don't take your iPhone with you. And so you actually have a few moments, 10, 12 minutes to actually go inward. And when you do, you realize, like, oh, I'm doing something that's incongruent with my life. I'm doing something that I wouldn't be proud of if my kids found out. I'm doing something that I know I should do better at, but I'm not. And I have a gift and I'm not sharing it. If there was a God, if there's a universal consciousness, what would they think of me? It's like, oh shit, okay, I better do something about it. And not enough of us are listening to that voice. I was taught early on by my mentor, Jim Franco, to listen to that inner voice. And it was probably one of the greatest gifts I've gotten.
Well, it's funny when you said, oh shit, because I've had those words echo in my mind an infinite number of times. Like, oh shit, this is what you're trying to tell me the entire time? And it's like, yeah, like 10 years ago, I was trying to tell you this and you didn't listen, and it got progressively worse until you decided it was too painful, and then you actually listened to me. And man, I've had that thought echo in my mind an infinite number of times. I can't even explain it.
Yeah. We are
I like the idea of stillness, though.
Yeah. I mean, there's something in it. It's why, like, when you go on a what do they say? I'm going to go on a hike for the next 5 days somewhere where I don't have reception. And then what happens? You come back and you have this look in your eye, and people are like, damn, dude, you seem very tapped into who you are. You're like, yeah, I've discovered myself. I found myself. Why do we have to go somewhere where we are not connected to be able to find ourselves? I think it's stillness, it's going internal, or people that go to a 3-day yoga retreat where, hell, when they come to the project, the first thing we do is we take all their technology away. I don't care if it's a Whoop on your arm or an iPhone. For 75 hours, you are disconnected. And the number one thing we hear from these guys was like, man, it was so freeing to be disconnected from technology, to not know what's happening in the world for those 75 hours. Hell, us instructors, we don't even wear watches, so they can't tell what time it is. They can just tell it's daytime and nighttime because they see the outside every now and again. Outside of that, They go, you know, it was one of the greatest feelings ever to be free. And as I was crawling for miles in that pit, to just go internal and talk to self. And those are the opportunities. Like we go to yoga retreats and pay to go on these like wilderness hikes to be able to find ourselves. It just cracks me up when we could do that just by being still for 20 to 30 minutes at a time every day.
I mean, I think the same thing about the gym. No discount to the business that you've created with Fit Body Bootcamp, but I'm like, we have to go into these climate controlled, perfectly symmetrical, beautiful, the weights are all balanced place to manufacture something that our ancestors would just do on a daily basis, not because they wanted to look good, but because they wanted to survive.
Right, exactly. Funny how they were moving logs and boulders and trying to figure out how to make a spear and an axe, and all of that kept them alive and fit and functional. But it was for survival. Today, you know, we sit on our comfortable couch, climate controlled. We order our food from an app, and we get upset when we can see our food getting jammed up on the highway because the Uber driver or whatever Grubhub driver is taking a little longer. And we've gotten so soft and comfortable and complacent that now we have to go to an air-conditioned gym, hire a personal trainer. Like, my industry was created because the world has gotten so lazy and complacent. It's unfortunate, but that's literally the industry that was created, and I'm a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend and I often laugh about this, and she does it lovingly, but she's like, your job is so stupid. Your job is ridiculous. And I'm like, I know it is, but it is. Like, it's the reality of the situation. We need to have these conversations. We need to talk about these things. It's such a weird position to be in. And look, I'm not discounting anybody who needs this sort of thing. I personally need it in my life. You need the gym in your life. So we're not discounting it. It's just an interesting phenomenon is all.
Right. This is just where we become, or sometimes we're too smart for our own goods, and this is where we've come to life. But I once had this funny conversation with myself. This was 2014. True story. I was sitting in my car eating a bagel with cream cheese. It's embarrassing to tell you this story. Sitting in my car eating a bagel with cream cheese instead of going to the gym that morning. I was so stressed, and I'm an emotional eater. Or I was an emotional eater. I no longer identify as an emotional eater. That's not who I am. But sitting in my GMC truck, eating a bagel with cream cheese, listening to Howard Stern, and Howard Stern is interviewing this guy named Howard Wasden, who was a SEAL Team 6 sniper back in the Mogadishu days, like Black Hawk Down days. Like, he was in that era in the 90s. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, wow, these guys like do crazy shit. And here I am like hand-wringing about going to the gym, and I'm stressed out because, you know, Fit Body Bootcamp at the time, we were building it and it was costing me too much, and I didn't know how to build it, and it was kind of chaotic. And I was like, all right, man, if there was a gun to your head, I asked myself, a gun to my head, not like I'm going to kill myself, but if there was a gun to my head, could I figure out the answers to everything? And I immediately go, yes. And so sometimes if we just need to operate like there's a gun to our head, because you can go take any guy who's like fat, lethargic, out of shape, and claims that he doesn't have time, and say, hey, man, I'm going to put this gun to your head. I will pull the trigger in 10 minutes if you don't take this piece of paper and this pen and write down everything you need to do to get lean, jacked, and fit. Bro, this fat, lethargic guy who claims who has no time will write down his macros. He will write down what exercise he needs to do, and he will write down how he will find time because he doesn't want the gun to go bang. And sometimes we need to operate in life like there is a gun to our head, like that level of urgency, because there is no shortage of information. There's a shortage of action and agency.
I think the challenge, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that it doesn't really sting until it's too late. For example, with my marriage, I didn't really know there was a problem until she said I wanted to divorce. But if I would have been paying attention and I would have been in tune with all the signals, I probably could have caught it earlier and maybe even done something about it before it got to that point. But we don't do that because it's not painful. It's just not painful enough.
Right, exactly. Pain is a great motivator. What do they say? The carrot or the stick? And then Tony Robbins always says, we are more likely to want to avoid the stick than to go towards the carrot. And so pain is a great motivator.
Well, B, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you've got an important meeting coming up. Will you just let the guys know where to connect with you, learn more about MDK and other projects you have going on, including your book, which we didn't talk about at Man Up, which is a great book, and that came out several years ago. But just let the guys know where to connect with you.
Absolutely. Best place to connect with me is either on Instagram or YouTube at Bedros Keuilian. And of course, they can find my book, which has now become a national bestseller on Amazon. It's called Man Up. And Ryan, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, man. You've been a great friend to me over the years, have given me the opportunity to be on your show several times. And I'm just forever grateful for our relationship.
Likewise, brother. Love you. Appreciate you. Thank you for joining us today. It means a lot to me.
Thank you.